We're going to get started here. Thank you all for coming this evening. First line of business we have is the swearing in of our newest councillor, Councillor Jamie Wilkie. Jamie, you go up to Heather there. Okay.
Did you bring the donation?
Oh. It's on the mail.
So Jamie, if you could read this out loud for the audience to hear?
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
I, Jamie Wilkie, affirm that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute, according to law, the office of Councillor of the Town of Turner Valley.
All right, excellent.
Give me a second, please.
Oh, you got 10 seconds. I'm going to call the order.
Okay.
All right, we'll call to order at 6:31. Agenda approval, 4.1, April 15th, regular meeting agenda. Administration, we want to have an adjustment on our agenda here this evening.
Yes, Mayor Crane, thank you. Through the mayor, we would like to make an amendment to tonight's agenda and remove agenda item 12.5 and postpone that to a slightly later.
So that's 12.5 is being deferred. Nope. That was it? All right. Can we get an adoption of the agenda as amended? Councillor Gordon? All in favor? That's good. Carried. Adoption of previous minutes, 5.1, April 1st, 2019, regular council business meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes? Councillor Holladay?
I'll give you a motion, but I also had some adjustments I wanted made.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, normally they're all tickety-boo, but I had 3 issues I wanted addressed. First is the very last motion, when we came out of our closed session, it said that Councillor Hamilton made that motion to prepare a public report on employment levels, pre-flood and post-flood. That was myself that made that, if we could get that corrected. Second, underneath the response to my admin inquiry on the project manager position, it didn't fill in the information I was given, or we could get some Coles Notes type information put in it. It requires somebody to go to the video and look it up. All the other ones had some information, but I think it would be easier for residents if they could have a little bit of detail on that, like summary from the video. Because I know for myself, I had to go to the video and try and scroll through and figure out where it was to listen back to it. It'd be easier if there was a little something about that in the video. Then I also wanted some clarification of the comment about council not being included on the email under the Martins section 5.01. I'm afraid of how it's written, that it would be misinterpreted that information is being withheld from council, or that they're being discouraged from contacting council. I don't think that's the intent, because we all know that we're elected officials and people talk to us, and once you email us, everything is private, or everything is public. There's no privacy in public office anywhere. So I just want it, I don't know what needs to be cleared up there, so that it doesn't get interpreted that information is being withheld.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Councillor Holladay. A couple of points. First, on the response I gave to the project manager, it's difficult to include conversations in the minutes, but we'll find a way to try to weave the spirit and intent of what was relayed. Generally in minutes, we just relay the context of the response and not specific details in conversations, but we'll see what we can do. Secondly, regarding my message to the Martins after their question of council, the message specifically was that any information that needed to go to council should flow through administration. So we'll make sure that the minutes reflect that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are we good with that? So just, one clarification, can we just, defer this adoption of the minutes until, we see the finished product?
Adopted as amended.
We can adopt it as amended, and you can send out an email. As amended? Okay, so, Councillor Holladay?
Okay, so I'll change my, so a motion, to adopt the minutes as amended.
Okay, any questions on that?
No.
Good. All in favor? Excellent, thank you.
Do I get to vote?
You do get to vote, Councillor Waring,
No.
or Deputy Mayor Waring.
Whatever.
Number 6, question period. At the start of every public meeting, we have a 15-minute question and answer period. Today I have one question in my possession. Is there any others? That's it? Okay, I will read this out. This is, can I say who it's from? Or you could address it? Okay. It's from Richard Brotherstone. Is it possible to have the town website show a list of town administration department contacts by department full name and direct lines similar to that of our neighboring town of Black Diamond? I'll just speak to this and then I'll hand it off to Todd, Mr. Sharp, briefly. Yeah, unlike Black Diamond has a full list of their employees. Here at Turner Valley, for customer service purposes, we triage all of our calls through the front office. So if you phone, you wanna talk to Public Works, you're gonna phone the town office, and it's gonna come to them to field the question. Then they start a record keeping of that question to ensure that it gets followed up on time. That's not in this specific question, but that's the methodology behind why we have the front office triage all of our departments. Other than that, it's just a list that you'd access through the front office. So, Todd, I don't know if you want to add more to it. It's just a list of the contacts. So, go ahead.
No, Mayor Crane, you're exactly right. We like flowing all of our customer inquiries through the front desk so that we can distribute them that way. So I couldn't have said it better myself.
So there you go. We'll get you an official email track on that one for a response, Mr. Brotherstone. Okay. Councillor Holladay, yeah, go ahead.
I was just on the MD website today because I needed to contact somebody from the MD, and it was actually really handy to have, they don't have phone numbers, but they have emails. I understand having phone calls being directed through the front office, but to have the list, the employee's name, their position, not all employees, obviously your grader operator doesn't need to be on there, but your main managers to have their email, name, email, and department, so you know generally who it is. I don't think that's a bad thing. Maybe not cell phone numbers, I could see the issue with that, but to have their email and who's in what department, I think it came in handy for me as a resident trying to get a hold of the MD, so I think it would be handy for our town residents.
Okay. Anyone else? Len, yeah, go ahead.
The town does have a list with email addresses.
Do they?
Yeah, under contacts. There's the CAO, there's animal control, there's Public Works, there's FCSS, there's finance, there's legislative services, planning and development, and phone numbers. Well, it all goes to the main line, but the email addresses are all there.
The email addresses? Yeah.
Alright. All good, Red? Keep in touch. Alright, we'll accept that for information. Can I get a motion to that effect?
I'll give you the motion.
Councillor Hamilton, accept for information. All in favor? There you go. Alright, statutory hearings, we have none. Delegations. 8.1 we do have. Trans-Canada West Pathway Delivery Project. Welcome, guys. Why don't you have a seat up front here? And you can activate your microphone by pressing the button on the right. I will activate it for you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. We look forward to hearing what you guys have in the form of.
slide them out a little bit, yeah. So good evening. Before we begin, we'll just introduce ourselves. So I'm Kaylee Casper, and I'm the Community Relations / Public Affairs Representative for the West Path Delivery Project.
Hi, my name is Chris Fung. I'm the project manager for the Turner Valley Unit Cooler Edition.
Brad Olson, project manager for the general contractor on the Turner Valley Unit Edition.
We promise not to side it back too much.
Yeah, right? You can just swing.
Perfect. Just wait for.
Yeah, for some reason the data isn't showing up on the screen. Try it a different way here.
There we go. You wanna just flip to the agenda then? Great, so as Mayor Crane said, that we're here with the West Path Delivery Project. We're here to discuss the project scope, provide a bit of a regulatory update. We were here last in June of 2018, so we have some exciting updates to share with Council. So we're mainly here to speak to the Turner Valley Compressor Station Unit Edition, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. It's just down the road from here. We'll be speaking to our project schedule, what workforce will look like. We'll speak to a bit of employment opportunities and that type of thing, and then discuss our safety and emergency response. So a little bit about TransCanada. We are one of North America's largest natural gas pipeline operators. We currently operate over 91,000 kilometers of natural gas pipeline. This equates to 25% of the clean burning natural gas that's consumed by North Americans daily. Something that has been in the media lately and that I just wanted to raise is you might be aware that we have intentions to change our name from TransCanada to TC Energy. We feel that this better reflects the breadth of our business, as we have natural gas, energy, as well as liquids pipeline systems. So we have proposed that name change, however, it will not be finalized until it goes to vote in May. So we may have a new name come next month.
Excuse me.
So as I said, we're here to speak to the West Path Delivery Project. As of Thursday, April 11th, we actually did receive approval to construct and operate the pipeline as well as both facilities. So to give you a quick overview of the project scope, it includes a pipeline portion, which the pipeline actually isn't within this jurisdiction. It is within the MD of Rocky View, and it starts near the town of Cochrane. And it's a 21.5 kilometer pipeline loop of an existing pipeline, so the majority of the pipeline route will be in an existing right of way. And the portion of the project we are here to speak to today is the Turner Valley Compressor Station Unit Edition. So as I had mentioned, we already have the existing facility, so what we are constructing will be a unit addition, a 30 megawatt unit addition at the existing facility. In addition to that unit addition, we are also constructing a second compressor station unit addition known as the Burton Creek Compressor Station, and that's within the MD of Ranchlands.
Right on. I don't think, Kaylee, you did enough justice to this NEB approval that we just received last Thursday. There's been a lot of hard work that's been put towards that behind the scenes, just trying to satisfy regulatory in terms of any safety concerns. Any regulatory conditions that were put on the project. The project team has done a really a good job putting those documents together. So I just wanted to talk about the scope a little bit here. So for those of you who don't know, compressor site is, in its simplest terms, just a means to get gas from point A to point B. And this particular compressor site is part of the West Path Delivery program, and it sits it basically, of course, it's 3 kilometers northwest of Turner Valley here, sitting adjacent to the existing Turner Valley unit. Currently exists, there's 2 units right now. You can see in drawing there in the 3D model. On the left side, that's the south side of the site. That's where the existing facility sits. You can see two units there already. They're in gray, the two larger buildings. And then on the right side, which is the north end, is actually where the new unit expansion will be. And you might be asking, why all of a sudden do we need a new unit here? Why do we need to go to construction and build more capacity for compression? And the reason is because TransCanada has secured multiple contracts on the seller side as well as the buyer side. Basically, it means that we have too much gas for us to handle on our existing system, and that's why we need to add this new compressor site. So the new compressor site, the green building, that's where the new unit will be sitting. That's what we call the turbo compressor unit. That's actually the unit that has the gas engine-driven compressor that actually pushes the gas through the system. And then you'll see a bunch of buildings we call auxiliary buildings on the west side of that, near the top of the screen there. You can't see them that clearly, but there's about 4 or 5 different buildings, and those are to support the system in various ways, whether it being electrically or mechanically or controls wise. So it's got big computers there that control how the system operates and how we do that safely. As well as you can see the bright blue near the east end of the site, and that's the coolers that we keep referring to. And the coolers are to make sure that the gas that we push through, inevitably it gets warmer and warmer as we go. That just cools down the system to allow for it to be under pipeline limitations. I believe I've covered everything. And some more.
I'd say so.
Thank you.
Well, that is fantastic. And how long do you figure construction is gonna take for this here new unit? And what are we gonna look at for traffic coming through town?
Yeah, we definitely address those in the upcoming
Okay.
slides. So in terms of the schedule, so to, I guess, pump up our approval a bit more and address that. So from the date of the approval, we have some conditions that we need to clear. So what that looks like is today we began to file compliance with those conditions. So once we clear those, we can actually begin site work. So for the next 30 days, no actual dirt movement can occur, but we will begin to mobilize at site and bring equipment and that type of thing. So as you'll see on the schedule, April 2019, we begin to mobilize to site. Earthworks, piling, structural and concrete work will begin between May to September. In September, we will have a station outage and do continued mechanical work. Chris, I actually might get you to jump in and just explain what the station outage and perhaps associated blowdown will mean.
Sure. So in order for us to tie mechanically into the system, I mentioned that there is a main line that the existing facility takes gas from and pushes it from point A to point B. What we're doing during this station outage is blowing down this existing yard so that we can make those mechanical tie-ins to that main line system. So without this outage, we're not able to blow down the yard. You know, obviously the yard is still pressurized and we can't make any cuts into the existing pipeline. So we need this station outage in order for us to do things safely and cut in. And we expect that to last about 10 days. However, the blowdown portion is just gonna be, the 1 day, probably just a few hours. You might have heard in the past, when the gas exits the yard, you hear a little bit of gas, well, quite a bit of gas coming out of the system. That's just called the blowdown and letdown of the system.
Great, thanks. And so from September 2019 to March 2020, we'll continue that mechanical work, have gas in the yard as well as performance testing, and then we have an anticipated in-service date of June 2020 for all components of the project, so both compressor stations as well as the pipeline itself. So as you'll see to the left of me, I have Brad Olson, and he's from MasTech, and MasTech is the prime contractor that we awarded for the Turner Valley portion of the project. So Brad, I'll turn it over to you just to speak a bit to what MasTech will be doing.
Good evening, thank you. So Maztec, we're a general contractor that performs work throughout Western Canada. Mostly act as a general, so that's looking after the majority of the construction. And then we do self-perform multiple different trades, mechanical work, civil, as well as concrete and structural. So we do fabrication of structural and piping work in our Edmonton facilities, and then they'll be hauled out to site where we'll assemble the components on site. So there is a few opportunities for local workers. We will be looking, we're just basically kinda getting mobilized to site and set up exactly how many people, and then we'll start placing ads in the town. We may get talk with a few of you as well to see what the best sites to place to get the word out there as well. So we will have some need for welders, pipe fitters, carpenters, iron workers, equipment operators, so running backhoes and loaders, as well as laborers, so just general labor work. So we will be placing some ads for that, and looking for trying to get as many local people involved in the project as we can. So. Did you want me to talk about the lodging as well, or?
Let's
Leave that.
jump to the projected workforce and,
Okay.
yeah.
So for the majority of the project, we'll have approximately 60 people throughout the project. We'll be peaking close to 100 at the highest point of the project. But for the most part, it'll range in between that 40 to 60. The first couple months, we'll just be mostly doing civil work, which will be our earthwork and concrete. And then we'll move over into the mechanical portion of the job, so. That's kinda, we're looking, as we were saying, April, May is when we'll be starting the project, and it'll be running all the way through to basically February, March of next year. So.
So in terms of what the town can expect during construction, NGTL is committed to following best practices as well as remaining in line with government as well as regulatory best practices. As with any construction, you can typically expect an increase in noise in the area. We have done noise modeling and testing, and we do not expect any significant increase to local noise. It will be below the Health Canada threshold as well as the ADR Directive 38 permissible sound levels. So we anticipate 40 decibels in the evening and 50 during the day. We have implemented noise mitigations such as the installation of air inlets and combustion exhaust silencers, and acoustic design specifications for the compressor building and roof. And then we are also committing to have equipment doors and windows closed whenever possible, as well as acoustic insulation to be installed for our above ground piping. We are expecting to have 2 weeks in September of continuous shifts, so 24-hour shifts. I actually did have an initial conversation with Monique this morning, and we would like to obviously work with administration to determine how we can work around the bylaw for those 2 weeks and request an exception to the bylaw for those 2 weeks. Obviously, we will make our best efforts to have minimal activities, or quieter activities, I should say, throughout the evening hours, so that would only be welding and that type of thing, no loud activities such as pile driving. So that's something we're committed to working with both the town and likely the MD as well. And then in terms of other things to note for construction, we will be doing some clearing of about 40 to 50 trees within NGTL's fence line. And in terms of traffic flow and road access, I know you had asked that, Mayor, we will be primarily accessing the site via Township Road 20. We want to obviously minimize impact to local traffic wherever possible, so that will be our primary access for the project. And I believe there is a map on the following slide that illustrates that. Yeah, so there's just an example of our site access plans.
Sliding off before the S turn.
One final slide, I believe.
Perfect. I'll take a look at this, and then Brad, maybe you can mention some project specific in terms of construction. But I think in terms of TransCanada, I won't bore you with the specifications that we have to follow, CSA, Z662, those sorts of specs. But I do want to say that we monitor this site remotely as well as having people on site. So at any point in time, we have systems that communicate to our headquarters in Calgary that we're able to monitor, things like pressure, things like how fast the unit's going, how much gas is going through, exactly which valves are open, which ones are closed. So I did want to mention that. And also inherently in the design here, this is a parallel site here, so we're able to actually isolate this site from the rest of it, so we can actually independently blow down this station from the existing facility, as well as control measures to keep this town safe as well, such as the access just on the north end there. We want to restrict as much access as we can from the other end, so that people aren't ripping past the town and where people are living. So that was part of the consideration of that access, as well as we've worked to deal with MassTech to continue maintaining that road as well. We understand that throughout construction, we see lots of heavy equipment, inevitably that's gonna happen. But I believe on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, MassTech will be making sure that that road is returned back to a decent condition. I believe those are anything else to add there, Brad?
Nope.
Cover it all?
Wonderful, I'll turn it over to you for any questions you might have.
Excellent, thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Rabb? You're good?
It sounds interesting, yeah.
There you go. Cindy? You're good? Okay. Councillor Holladay, Deputy Mayor said. I would just like to thank you guys for coming here and explaining everything to us and to the public. And as I told you earlier, you're on video, so anyone who wants to find out about your project now and look for some jobs, they know there's 100 coming down
Just
the
the
pipe.
back of our heads.
Well, the back of your head's good looking too.
Just turn around before you leave and wait.
I believe, on behalf of council, we'd also like to point out, and I don't know if you wanted this divulged, but we know that you sponsored our Discovery Days for the tune of $5,000 for community support. And for that, thank you very much. And with that being said, thank you for your presentation. We
Just
have
wanna
no
mention,
questions.
I'm gonna come to those days with Kaylee,
Yeah.
and then I'm
Hey,
gonna do a face
perfect.
paint right on her, just like on your bullet. So look forward to engaging with the community, and it's a pleasure being here with you
You
guys.
should come out, it's a great day.
Yes, we'll definitely be there. Thank you
Awesome.
so much
Thank you.
for having
Thank you,
us.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Perhaps a good company.
Could you leave your business cards with our administration?
I don't have any.
Well, as long as we got the PR, I'm sure she'll
That's right.
fill us all in.
Yeah.
That's awesome,
I've got
thanks.
all the contact information.
You've got it?
Right. Yeah.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, guys. Okay,
Mayor Crane,
yes, sir?
could we get a motion to accept that as information, please?
Absolutely.
I'm pleased to give that motion.
Councillor Rabb for information. All in favor? Perfect, thank you. Chief Administrative Officer's report, 9.1, we have no items. Administrative responses, we have no items. number 11.1, administrative inquiries. We have 4 this evening. Councillor Hamilton, would you like to start off?
Sure.
You want a physical copy?
I've got
You
one.
good? Okay.
Thank you. I just had a question regarding, street cleaning. I've got kids that are anxious to rollerblade and do all those fun things on the roads, and there's a lot of gravel, and I was just wondering when we would anticipate seeing that happening, and, just wondering if it's gonna be what we've seen in the past, in regards to dry, or
Dust bowl.
dust ball, right?
Dust bowl.
Are we gonna be using water with these trucks, and, yeah, so timeline and maybe kind of what we can anticipate seeing.
Quality control. Mr. Sharp?
Sure. Typically, we sweep the streets in a May timeframe, early to mid-May. We don't like doing it too early in April because, as you know, where we live, we could end up with another snowfall, throwing down more sand and gravel, and then duplicating the work. So generally, the work has been done in the May timeframe. My sources tell me we always use water. I understand it might have been a little bit dusty last year over a couple of things. When we push our street sweeper that we attach to our skid steer, we don't have the luxury of using some water. But we can't soak it. Now, you've been here longer than I have, and I'm judging from the looks that maybe water isn't used in all instances. So we will ensure that best practices are used for the street sweeping and water is used where possible.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? Sorry, is that something that the town does, or it's not something that we contract out?
So some of the smaller work along trails and on the shoulders of some of our roads or in intersections, we'll use some of our own equipment for that, but typically we contract the bulk of that.
Okay, thank you. And if we do contract it out, I'm sure we'll let them know about our water concerns. Councillor Holladay, you have 2 questions. You can start her off.
Just wanted to touch base on the live streaming. I did have noticed the quality is great. I'm watching it lately, so thank you. But other municipalities also using the same system as us will timestamp the videos on the agendas and minutes, so you can watch. Users can come and click on specific agenda items rather than having to sit through and try and find the items they want to hear. So just wondering if we have that feature available on our current subscription and what it involves to get it up and running.
So through the mayor to Councillor Holladay, we do have that feature. Unfortunately, we're just waiting for our fiber optic to be run into council chambers that'll allow us to be better with the utility that we do have. So currently, because we don't have high-speed internet wired to the building, we can't do that. We anticipate in the first week of May that work will be completed, and then we'll be able to draw those links from the council agenda to specific points in the recording.
Nice.
Excellent, thank you. And question number 2, Councillor Holladay?
In the fall of 2014, Turner Valley's Pedestrian Safety Task Force made a list of recommendations to council, and I was wanting you to report back to council on the progress that we've made on those recommendations.
I am going to have to bring that answer back to council. I did some quick digging today, and it appears that most, if not all, of the initiatives were completed, but I'll take the time to answer properly for the next council meeting.
Excellent, thank you. And traditionally, we only allow 2 questions per councillor, but I phrased this paragraph with about 4 in it, I think. So I'll just lay it out, and if you can answer it now, that's fine. But can you please give a brief clarification regarding parking requirements for a minor business or a home-based business? How is it possible for a home-based business to increase parking stalls in a subsection that is already built out? And is it really required if the home-based business only employs the individual? Is there a relaxation on storage of materials on properties for tradesmen, businesses, or other small self-employed individuals such as siders or even gardeners? And how many complaints has the town received for unsightly properties due to small business storage in the last year? So there's a bit of, and I dropped that on you this morning, so I don't expect to have numbers, but if you want to have a go at it, you can, or you can bring it back at the next one.
Mayor Crane will have to bring an answer back to you. There's multiple answers.
I figured, yeah. So, thank you. Okay, moving on, 12, bylaws and policies. This is a good one. The Joint Economic Development Committee Working Group presentation for bylaw, established committee, and shared service agreement with BD. And Councillor Gordon, you're gonna lead us in, and we're gonna have Councillors Kloiber and Daryl Lalonde, Councillor Lalonde, and former Mayor Tuck. Are you coming up as well?
Certainly.
Absolutely. And Manik was part of this as well. You could probably grab a seat if you wish. I'm gonna pass this over to Councillor Gordon, who has all the lead-ins for the whole presentation.
Well, first and foremost, I get to speak on behalf of Councillor Waring and myself and Councillor Kloiber and Councillor Lalonde. It's been a wonderful privilege to work together in this working group to come together with a intermunicipal economic development bylaw, terms of reference, and moving forward with a shared agreement, which we'll be looking at 12.2 and 12.3. It's been a tremendous privilege to work together and to come together in an agreement to better our community in intermunicipal fashion. This work behind the scenes is often not recognized, but I'm a huge fan of giving honor to whom honor is due. And Turner Valley has had the privilege of taking the lead in this, and Ms. LeBlanc has gone above and beyond in her support of the four councillors who have worked together. The support she's given, the direction she's given, hearing our concerns, working together with us has been remarkable, and I want to thank her publicly for that. Without further ado, Councillor Kloiber is here and Councillor Lalonde, and Ms. Tuck, a recent addition, and it's good to have her with us as she's overcome some major health concerns, and we're looking forward to working together with her. But if you will, take it away.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Can everyone hear me? Do I have to talk into this thing?
You're good now.
All right, so I'd like to echo your sentiment. We had a good time building this. It was fun. So I'll say this for the benefit of your audience. About a year ago, the Turner Valley and Black Diamond Councils got together and decided to put this Economic Development Committee together. I'm not even gonna read those. So it came with a CARES grant, so a portion of it was covered. And yeah, if you wanna skip to the next slide, it describes why we wanted to do this. It just made sense financially, and pooling resources between the two towns is always, historically something we like to do. So now the exciting part, for me anyway, the makeup of the committee is 2 councillors from each town, and then 6 members at large from any town, either town. Wait a minute.
Yeah, not okay.
So that's sort of where we are now. We are going to start doing recruitment and appointments if this bylaw is passed by both councils. Yes, so that's what we need to do. You guys have it before you today. Black Diamond has it before council on the 17th, that's Wednesday. Yeah. Plowed right through. Any questions?
From the committee.
Pardon me?
There you go.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't have any? Okay.
Being facetious.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor, I was being facetious, he says. Any questions from council regarding the EDC?
I have none on the presentation. So I think I'm good until 12.2.
Until 12.2. Councillor Gordon, will you lead us in 12.2?
All right.
Do we need to accept this? No, we'll do it all at the end.
Yeah.
Yep. Ready? Hit your button.
Just for now.
There we go.
Since Ms. LeBlanc is sitting at the table, I'm going to defer to her for 12.2 with our shared service agreement, or the CAO, whoever there, and then we'll be going into 12.3, looking at our bylaw and our terms of reference. The shared service agreement is really exactly what it says it is. We're working together, and it has yet to be completely formulated, but if you would speak to that, Ms. LeBlanc.
Certainly, that's fine. May I just stand and speak?
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, the shared service agreement is presented to you. It is something that actually can be signed off by our chief administrative officers. However, we wanted councils to be aware of essentially the terms of engagement. This outlines the rules in terms of working with each other. While we do build, and we know we will continue to build trust, it is something that outlines how we will look at sharing expenses, sharing revenues, leads, opportunities, and essentially it's all to be able to really maximize the benefit of working together, to be able to attract new businesses, be able to also retain those that are already here and help those businesses that exist as we know them now, and then also explore together how we can work to be able to attract and that investment for non-residential development. That's in essence what this looks like. It does speak to different clauses that outline how that will happen. This was reviewed by our lawyers, so the municipal lawyers did take a look at it, and any of their suggestions were incorporated into this. We've had many reviews of it, and we present to you what would be the final draft.
Questions from council? Councillor Hamilton.
I just have one quick one. Thank you so much for all of your work and putting this together. But in regards to the term, I'm just wondering if we'd want to start it to give a full 2 years instead of, because currently it's starting January 1st, 2019, and goes to December 31st, 2021. I'm wondering if we would start at April 2019 to go to April 2021, just for ease of simplicity of getting the full 2 years.
Understood, if I may, through the chair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That was specifically designed at the beginning to align with the CARES grant, so that's the Community and Regional Economic Support Grant. And we were awarded $26,000 from that particular grant to be able to offset the cost for this particular phase. So the way that the committee was looking at it is that would be the first year. We do need to complete that portion of it by the end of December this year. And then hopefully by then we've reported back to council through our CAOs, and then you would feel confident to be able to continue. There are termination clauses within this agreement, therefore at any point if you felt that it was no longer something that was viable or suited your needs, then there would be an option to be able to terminate it. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you. Just for my purposes, didn't see some of the lead-in that led to this, but the demarcation between phase 1 and phase 2, where do we stand in that process? Are we towards the end of phase 1 now, moving into phase 2? How is that kind of laid out?
Do you mind if I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this working group was essentially to put before you the shared agreement for review, but also to really prepare that bylaw so that we would be looking at the future, if you will, initiatives that we would take on together. Phase 1 is really the consolidation of both of the economic development plans. So Black Diamonds was adopted, I believe, in 2016, and Turner Valley's is dated, it's 2012. And so the first phase was to be able to take a look at those two, work together to be able to find a common ground so that we would go forward with a common joint intermunicipal economic development strategy. The second portion to that would be also to develop a marketing plan, but not the implementation of it. So by then, we expect that we will have fully on board our new IEDC, which is the Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee, and they will have some input in terms of what that looks like. And then the second phase, would be next year, based on funding through budget, would be the implementation of that marketing strategy. So at the moment, we are at the RFP and recruitment of the consultant. That was a task and authority that was provided to the working group. That closes April 26th, and then hopefully by the time that's selected in the end of June, we will have a committee fully in place and be able to work towards completing phase 1.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yep. Very cool.
Do we have any other questions from council? I'd just like to say, just on this one alone, I really like the last edition with the key deliverables and projected timelines. I love to see timelines it gives us a nice accurate window that we can then follow and look at those achievables. And it's right out into the end of 2020, so that gives us a long projection. So it's really great to see that, and I can guarantee you we'll be following that along because it's just so neatly laid out. So thank you. Thank you for the committee for doing such a great job on this one. Any questions from council before we're gonna motion out on this one? Okay. Can I get a motion, Councillor Gordon?
Totally. We'll go ahead with option one here, that council directs administration and approves the Economic Development Committee Shared Services Agreement and further directs administration to prepare the agreement for execution.
Do we have any further debate? All right, all in favor of that motion? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. 12.3, following right in line.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, yes. Thank you. And I understand that we'll be sending some councillors to your meeting as well, so we look forward to sitting there for yours. Yeah, that's right. We'll let you guys get at it.
Just a second.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
go
all
ahead,
heckling too.
Councillor Gordon.
If I could have you guys stay for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, just in the event that we have some questions about the bylaw and the terms of reference, just to give some background to that, in the event that John or I may not quite be fully cognizant of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, and with that being said, we're gonna move on to 12.3, bylaw 19-1094, establishment of an intermunicipal economic development committee, bylaw and terms of reference. Councillor Gordon, would you like to lead off this discussion again?
Certainly, this follows up with the discussion we've already talked at. We're at the very much the stage of bylaw readings. We're getting set to go through 3 bylaw readings this evening, would be one of the main options. To take a look at this bylaw, I'll turn it over to Ms. LeBlanc to give us some more meat and potatoes regarding this bylaw.
Go ahead,
Thank you very
Ms.
much,
LeBlanc.
Councillor Gordon, through the
Might
chair.
just hit that button for me there, just for the people
Easy,
at home.
thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon and Mayor Crane. Essentially, the bylaw reviews the main activities and the mandate of the new IEDC. The entire exercise is really about working together to be able to increase the non-residential tax assessment base. So anything that improves our economic opportunities and our business advantages, if we will, and be able to also diversify our economy and take a look at other options such as housing innovations. So by establishing this particular bylaw, then it guides both of the communities towards one central organization to be able to have the authority by which to guide any of the economic development activities going forward.
Excellent, thank you. Council, any questions on the terms of reference for this committee? Sorry, and the bylaw, sorry. Yep. So, any questions?
Motion?
Councillor Holladay.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that I really like that it leaves open the ability of the committee to work with outside consultants and get new ideas and things. So that was something that we had talked about originally, and that's in there. So thank you. It was very good.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that if I may.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, on behalf of the 4 councillors present, that was one of our key initiatives that we agreed on together. We want some fresh eyes taking a look at the economic development plans that may be in place, how best then to strategize that to move it forward. We believe that some fresh eyes looking at that will be of great value, benefit for both towns.
Excellent. Councillor Robb.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the group that worked on it. It looks really good. I did notice, however, that our projected timelines suggested that we maybe have 1 reading of the bill tonight and 2 more next time. So I wonder why administration recommended that we have all 3 readings tonight. That would be, it's taken months for you guys to get this, the shape it's in. It'd be nice to have a sober second look maybe within the next 2 weeks. So I don't know why we have to have all 3 readings tonight. I don't understand that.
wanna speak to that?
You wanna turn yours off, huh?
We could do that. Not sure I'm doing
Okay, Councillor Gordon?
I believe that the main reason we were going ahead with 3 readings tonight is that during our friendship agreement meeting when in May 23rd, 2018, there was adequate discussion about having such a committee in place, and I believe with the 2 councils working together to bring it forward, that we have a sufficient document that provides adequate information about our goals and the achievables therein. So my preference is definitely to have the 3 readings tonight, but if council so defers, we're good with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
For
Councillor.
my comment, if we look at Schedule A, it says, first reading of IEDC bylaw in terms of reference, April 15th. Second and third reading, May 6th. So if we just got finished saying how it's nice to have this key deliverables and timelines on it, then why are we asking for all 3 readings tonight? I fail to understand that.
Okay, Todd, Mr. Sheriff, would you like to clarify here?
I sure can. In fact, all 3 readings was my recommendation to the committee. They had initially set out the timelines, but exactly as Councillor Gordon had said, I had felt the same way, that there had been adequate discussion and the intent of both councils was there, and so without further ado, I'd hope the council would adopt first, second, hear third, and give third reading. But much like Councillor Gordon had said, if council does not wish to do that, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion? All right, do we have a motion to set this in action?
I'll give you option
Okay,
First read.
Councillor Waring?
The council provide all 3 readings to the Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee bylaw and its terms of reference.
I think you're gonna say the same thing as me,
Okay,
but you go
let's say
ahead.
it.
You
Say
go
it.
ahead. We actually have to do it in individual readings, 1, 2, then unanimous, then third and final. So it might be an option up here,
The option is option 2.
but we can't do it that way. So you can change that to give it first reading.
There's me hurrying up. The council provide first reading to the Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee bylaw in terms of reference.
And do we have a number to reference? 1910 94? Yeah.
190042.
It's not on here.
Oh yeah, 1910.
Yeah, 19-1094. I know it's not there, but it's up top. So if you could just
It's
add
up
that
top.
number, bylaw 19-1094.
Adding bylaw 19-1094, establishment of an Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee.
Perfect, thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor? Excellent, thank you. Councillor Gordon?
Certainly. I will make a motion that council provides the second reading to the Intermunicipal Economic Development Committee bylaw 19-1094.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion on this bylaw? No? All in favor? Excellent. Now, just for a point of clarification for Councillor Wilkie, anytime we have a bylaw that comes in front of us, the normal procedures, you wouldn't always pass a bylaw in 3 full readings. In order to move on to the third, it has to be a unanimous vote of council to even entertain it. So if anyone says no, then it just gets deferred. It doesn't get defeated, it just gets deferred to the next meeting. So Councillor Rath, for example, can just say, no, I want to see you next time, and it's as simple as that. So, Councillor Rath, you want to give us a motion? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll give you a motion, but I'll vote against it. I make a motion that we have third reading of bylaw number
19-10-94.
10-19-24.
Yeah,
But
to
as I-
consider,
To consider, yeah.
yeah, to consider.
But as I said earlier, I don't know what the fire is in 2 weeks. I think we kinda did it here a while back, and there's always good reasons why it's good to move it along, but there's always good reason to maybe some residents gonna say, I don't like this, I don't like that, so I think that gives an opportunity for us to listen for 2 weeks and see what we hear. If we hear nothing, then it's a slam dunk. And if you got 2 readings, that means that council, I think, is approving of the process, and we all supported it some time ago, so I don't think it's a big stretch.
Thank you, Councillor Rabb, for making the motion and speaking to it. Any further, Councillor Holladay.
Yeah, I will agree with Councillor Rabb. Last time we did 3 readings in one night, we thought it was pretty innocuous, but I did have a resident call me the next day with some very valid points on it that made me wish that we had not done 3 readings in one night, so I won't be voting in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon.
And one of the reasons I believe we were able to go through the 3rd reading is because we're going into a consulting stage. And that'll give us more time as a working group and as the committee formulates to continue our conversations with the local businesses and any concerns that residents may have. It's not like we're jumping full-blown into a coordination stage yet, it's still in a consultant format.
Okay, any further debate? Councillor Hamilton? Okay, and I will call the question, all in favor? And we have not unanimous, so we are just gonna bump this to the next agenda, which you'll see we do have another item here. We're gonna be having a special council meeting on April 29th. If council approves that, we could add it to that meeting as well. So thank you for allowing the debate and democracy to flow on this one. All right, 12.4, thank you, Monique. Ms. Thompson?
Could a council member please put forward the motion to bring 3rd and final reading of the bylaw back to the May 6th meeting, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Gordon.
Right on, thank you so much for the healthy debate. I will direct administration to bring bylaw 19-1094 to our April 29th meeting. I understand we have a meeting on April 29th.
We will be.
It needs to go to regular meeting.
No, next.
Go ahead, Mr. Sherp.
We haven't reached that point in the agenda yet. We don't know if there's gonna be a meeting on April 29th.
Okay.
Let's
Or,
defer
would
this
suggest
until
the
then.
May 6th meeting.
Actually, I'd like to defer this particular motion until after we've reached that agenda item. It only makes sense.
Can we defer to the next special or regular?
Yeah.
Actually,
Could we not?
let me amend the motion if I may.
Here we go. 1 second, guys. Go ahead, Councillor
Yeah.
Gordon.
I make a motion that the 3rd reading for bylaw 19-1094 be set forward to the next available meeting of council.
That will work. All in favor? Excellent, thank you very much. 12.4, are we good, Ms. Thompson, to move forward? Okay, 12.4, Community Support Fund Request, the Turner Valley Oilfield Society Annual Speaker Event. We have a recommendation in front of us. Mr.
Mayor
Sharp?
Crane, just 1 second here.
Yep.
We just need to slow down just a little bit.
Sure.
Did we vote on that last motion?
We did.
Okay, I was taking notes.
Yeah, unanimous. So 12.4, Community Support Fund. This is where Councillor Hamilton would say, Mayor Crane, you need to slow down, your meetings are too fast. It's my Newfoundland's coming in. Turner Valley Oilfield Society Annual Speaker Event. Mr. Sharp, would you like to speak to this, or Lenick?
Sure, thank you, Mayor Crane. I'll defer to Ms. LeBlanc for this.
We'll have to put a little tag right there with your name on it tonight. All right, go ahead.
The application that you have in front of you.
We don't have one.
We don't have
We
one.
don't have it.
No. There's no attachment, but that's okay, you can tell us all
Oh.
about it and we'll figure it out.
All right, I apologize. It's from the Turner Valley Oilfield Society, and they are hosting, I believe, their third annual speaker series, whereby they bring in special guests. This year it happens to be Nancy Southern, CEO and President of ACO, and they really promote the history of the area and talk about a number of the cultural activities that are going on through the Turner Valley Gas Plant and the significance of the oil field within the history of the area. With that, while they are a nonprofit organization, they try very hard to be able to break even, but their budget shows, if you had a copy of it, that they're approximately $500 short, being able to keep also the ticket prices reasonable. It is open to the public, council is certainly invited, and they're asking for a little bit of assistance to be able to offset some of those costs. It is occurring, coming up, I believe, in May.
11th, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Isn't it 11th?
The 11th, that's right, thank you very much. And it essentially kicks off their season as well. It also is very close to the anniversary of the Digman, the discovery of the Digman 1, which is what established Turner Valley in 1914.
Very nice.
Awesome. I believe we got it in a email pamphlet form. So we don't have it in the agenda package, but I believe we've all seen it. That's how I knew that it was May 11th, and so did Deputy Mayor Waring. So, anyhow, I'm gonna hand this off to council for comments, and then we're gonna vote on it. So, any comments from council supporting the Turner Valley Oilfield Society in the tune of $500 for guest speaker and event? Deputy Mayor Waring?
Yeah, I think this is a very worthwhile project that we should support. It is open to the public, it's directed exactly on why we're here, and the more we can encourage people to be involved in these type of events and bring additional tourism, which is part of our strategic plan, the better for us all, businesses and residents.
Rest of council? Councillor Wilkie?
Yeah, I echo Mr. Waring's comments and just highlight, they've managed to bring some very impressive speakers to the town to date, and I hope to see that continue, so I'd be looking forward to supporting this.
What's the time, John? What time on the 11th?
There's in the programme, there's first, if the weather's good, there's a tour of the gas plant, and then I think it's around 4 o'clock.
Okay.
The inside as well.
Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, this is a excellent use of our community support grant. It's doing exactly what we intended to do, which is to let our name known in a very much more impact than just one or two organizations. So I fully support something, especially something that highlights our Turner Valley oil field and its history. Sometime we have to be very serious as a council about celebrating our past and seeing how much more we can do to support the gas plant and its historical significance.
Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, I'd like to support this as well, because they've been great partners with us. If you look at the trail system they have, and I don't think they're done partnering with us long-term, so I think it's an excellent organization to support. And I did go to the speaker last year, and she was awesome, so for sure.
Right on.
I agree with everything everyone has said thus far. Councillor Holladay?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. Where is it being held?
It's at
It's at the
Library.
Sugarfoot Library.
Oh, library.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
it is the library. Okay.
I'm going to the wrong place.
Okay, I believe that shows a pretty good support there. So all in favor of supporting this recommendation? Oh, we're gonna get a motion from Councillor Holladay.
To accept this community support.
To approve.
Option 1, right there.
I don't
So
have
you
that,
will-
so I'll wing it. Option to, or that, council directed administration to approve the community support grant, for Turner Valley Oil and Gas Society for $500.
Perfect.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Yes. Thank you very much. 12.5, we have deferred. We're on to old business. 13.1, council regular business meeting review, scheduling review. Mayor Crane? to rescind motion 1810-2904, a motion to reschedule the first Monday meeting of the month to be held at 1 p.m. and to revert back to the 6:30 p.m. start time. So, Councillor Waring, the chair is yours as I speak on this motion. So, we've had ample time to test the waters on daytime meetings and evening meetings, so we've been talking about going back to evenings. We've got our cameras up and running, recorded meetings in place. We've got a fairly young council, I'm gonna say -2.
Who's the other one?
Who would that be?
This guy. But it just seems that as we move forward, the attendance at the daytime meetings is not what we actually expected when we originally made that motion to change it up. So my recommendation to council is to rescind motion as stated 18-10-2904 and revert back to the 6:30 p.m. start times for the Monday meetings. So that's my request, but actually that's my motion, as John's the chair right now, and open for discussion.
Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Barry. This is one that's near and dear to my heart. You know, it's just a challenge for folks with a day job to make it out to meetings during the day, and this is something, having just come off of campaigning, that I heard time and time again, talking to people at the doors, increase transparency, increase people's ability to make it to meetings. The live streams are great, but it should be an option for folks, so wholeheartedly support this.
Councillor Good.
Well, I need to thank Mayor Crane for doing this, because it's been brutal missing one meeting a month, I'll be quite frank. And to be able to be back in council chambers, letting my point of view be known is excellent. I too have heard from a number of citizens and residents missing out on at least 50% of the time to come before council with a question if they so desire. So I wholeheartedly support the motion, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for doing that.
Okay, if there's no further questions from council, may we have a motion to put this forward? Okay, may we vote on the motion?
Would you like me to
Well,
read it back?
Yeah, go and read
Deputy
it.
Mayor Waring, the council rescind motion 18-10-2904, a motion to reschedule the first Monday meeting of the month to be held at 1 p.m. and revert back to the 6:30 p.m. start time.
Okay, all in favour of the motion? Carried unanimously. I hand the microphone back to the mayor.
Thanks, sir. And thank you, council, for supporting that. And especially I like to hear that straight from the doors, the campaign trail, that was a valid concern. So it's really good to hear that it's validated. 13.2, Turner Valley Parent Teacher Association request for funding. I hand the chair back to Deputy Mayor Waring after I speak. Okay, so in our capital budget planning, which we're gonna be doing phase 2, May 2nd is our first go, I believe.
Nothing's been confirmed yet.
Nothing confirmed, okay. Either way, those of you who've been on council, Jamie, this will be new to you. We, a year ago, talked to the PTA, Parent Teacher Association, Turner Valley School. They have been working diligently fundraising for their playgrounds. They built their playgrounds, there was some cooperation there, it's got built. It was a $350,000 upgrade, and we helped make that happen. Their newest project is a basketball court upgrade. They have $26,000 in place of funding for a $50,000 project. They've secured all the quotes, they have the project management covered. This would be a straight partnership for us, that if we were to support $25,000 towards this project, the project could be completed before the end of the school year, and we would have new basketball courts for the youth of our town to utilize all summer long. It would come at zero cost to our administrative time, which I think is the biggest benefit here, by supporting volunteer organizations that are well-oiled and have a proven track record. This to me is a great use of taxpayer dollars to increase our recreational facilities and help the PTA and the children of the town as well. So my recommendation / motion is to support the PTA request that we had last year for $25,000. And the funding stream would have to be determined by administration, as it is a capital project that the town does not own. It does not fall into our capital budget. It falls into an operations budget because we would not own the asset as a town. So this is where partnerships can become the difference between owning, like the spray park, for example, is a town asset. So the Lions Club gave money to it, but the town possesses it. In this case, we would be giving money to the other branch, and they would possess it. So it's just a slight change of angle, but the fact that they have already secured quotes and project management costs, to me is a no-brainer. But I bring it forward because I think it's a time-sensitive issue that can benefit the community at large. So, open for debate, and Councillor or Deputy Mayor Waring has the chair. Councillor Hamilton.
Can I give the chair back because I have comments?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I'm going to speak against giving this money. The school already has a multi-use indoor basketball court system which is available year-round, and it's well used by the school and by third-party organisations. So you could consider this as a duplicate project, and maybe the funds could be directed towards a facility not currently available within the town, something that might have been recognised by BPRAC and is a need in the community. Council previously donated $10,000 towards the playground project, and this money actually came out of the town's park and rec budget. With respect to this project, some of the things I want to know. We want to consider the benefits of the project. Who will actually benefit from it other than the school? Will it be a multi-use court facility? When will it be available for the general public or residents to use? Because of the school use and the hours when the school is, if you like, not accessible to third-party people. It's also going to be a seasonal use due to the weather. Council has just requested admin to trim $200,000 off the operating budget, and now we're coming back and asking them to add another $25,000, which I don't like the optics of. Our policy is to cut costs, find savings and efficiencies. So as things stand at the moment, I would not support this project.
Thank you, Councillor Waring. I hand you the chair.
Councillor
Hamilton.
There was a light there.
My light on?
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize.
Sorry, I didn't think it was.
Councillor Hamilton.
My apologies.
I just wanted to clarify the, because it's not a town-owned asset, that means we can't use grant funding, right? Okay. So it would require a transfer of reserves, so that's where we're talking about it would be.
Operation budget, it's not reserves, it comes out of our town tax, our property tax money.
Okay. So yeah, this one has me a little, I don't know what to do. I wanna support the school, I wanna give, opportunity for youth in our community for something to do, and I think that sport court being replaced would maybe fill a void for some kids. There's been a lot of debate locally, or I won't even say debate, but conversation, on online forums on, the lack of things for our youth to do in our community. I think that this would definitely help fill that void for certain demographics, so I'm a little bit torn. I do want to support the school, I do want to support our youth and give them opportunities for recreation in town, but at the same time, I hear Councillor Waring that we had a mandate, and anyway, I'm kind of on the fence right now. We'll see who sways me.
Looking for lights.
Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I struggle with this one too, because I was one of the people kind of stirring up that whole debate on youth activity. One of the big things that came out of it that I found was just a challenge around finding things to do indoors. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of outdoor options potentially available in the town, and that indoor may be where we tend to struggle a little bit in the winters. So, you know, I wonder if we're diverting funds from potentially applying them to something like that. The other thing I would bring up here is, you know, my preference for items like this would be to see some sort of shared services agreement in place with the school division, which is, you know, speaks to cooperating on asset purchases. I've seen these happen in other municipalities, and I know that the discussion has happened here, but I think that this is a perfect example of something that could go along those lines as well, where potentially the town and the school division could partner on an investment and, you know, share ownership, or it's under a separate entity. So those are my concerns. I think I'm struggling right now, but again, it's not a clear cut one for me, because I do like seeing additional activities, but
More information.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkie. Are there any more comments? Finally, Councillor Rapp.
I'm usually the quiet one in this group, as you know, so it's hard for me to say anything. I'd like to really piggyback on what Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Wilkie had to say, because yes, I think our youth need more activities. Basketball is a good activity for them. Outdoor basketball gives them an opportunity to go when the school is closed at nights or whatever. That said, I'm just not sure it's wise to spend that kind of money, and maybe there's other options that we have down the road. So I would need more time to think about it and maybe look at some other options. So I would be kind of anxious to have our capital project budget, and maybe that's a chance to discuss it a bit further, that what other options that we have that might help provide youth, because I think there is a need. I mean, you look at the Facebook comments, and there definitely is a need for youth, particularly that, you know, 10 to 20-year-old, 10 to 18-year-old, 10 to 16-year-olds. So it would be good, and yet I'm not sure I have 25,000 kicking around.
Councillor Holladay.
Yeah, I took the opportunity to talk to a few residents about this and get their opinions, and there's definitely a feeling that nothing much has been done over the last 10 years. Like there's been no real investments in youth and parks and things like that.
It's not true.
Yes, I know. I mean, we had the spray parks that thankfully the Lions took initiative on that. But I think having more outdoor activities is not a bad thing. So I'd like to keep considering this. Whether everyone's ready to make a decision on this tonight, I'm not sure. But I'd still like to keep this conversation going.
Thank you, Councillor Holladay. Any other councillors? Councillor Hamilton.
I just had a question regarding maintenance upkeep. Would it be, like, without a shared service agreement, do we know who would be responsible for those things? Would it be because it's on school property, the school would be looking after it? Or I'm wondering if step one is, as Mr. Wilkie presented, maybe the shared services agreement, or at least discussions with the school.
I agree.
Councillor Rapp.
Yeah, this is kind of off the subject and a different sport, but is there outdoor, I haven't paid attention, is there outdoor rink, has it got a cement or a pavement base? Because, you know, floor hockey and stuff like that are things that might interest kids the same age, and it's outside, and it's, the facility's there. You could throw a basketball, net up at both ends, and you could maybe kind of use our own facility, especially, And I'm always, when I read all this stuff on Facebook, I thought, well, what's wrong with floor hockey? Like, I mean, there's lots of good hockey players in this town that spend their whole winter chasing pucks all across the province. Why wouldn't they be interested in doing some stuff with balls in the summertime? With rollerblades, perhaps. I think that'd be a heck of a good exercise, and it would save us basically $25,000.
Sorry, one.
May I first? I'd just like to point out I'm not anti-outdoor basketball courts, but following on the line of what some of the councillors have mentioned, Parks and Rec have got some projects in mind that they will be bringing to the capital budget. And I believe before we make decisions on spending $25,000, we need to see what all the possible options are where this money could be spent, because we can only spend it once. And we have to be sure when we do spend it, we spend it in the right place and get a good bang for our buck. Horrible expression, but it's true. Thank you.
Councillor Holladay.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment, or to change this, or to defer this discussion to our first capital budget meeting?
Yeah, I'm going to rescind my motion, so that'll just kill it right there. And then I'll take that motion to bring it forward to the capital, if you'd like to make that one. So you can make that motion. So, motion's rescinded,
It's not capitalising.
because I did make the motion.
It's not capitalising, no. We can't go through capitalising.
Was there a motion made? I don't know. Ask
Yeah, I made a motion.
legislative services here.
That we supported.
Was there a motion there?
Hold on, we're gonna let Heather.
Have a vote on the motion?
Okay, sure. All right, we're gonna
Council
vote.
support the Turner Valley PTA request of a town donation of $25,000.
No, we don't wanna.
No, I just wanna rescind that motion.
You need to vote, if the motion is on the table, you need to vote on it.
We'll amend it then.
All right, then I'll amend the motion. Friendly amendment to defer, said motion to the May 6th. No, not even May 6th. We need to do capital budget.
Mayor Crane, before we go that far,
Yeah, why
I
don't
have a
you-
little bit of information for council.
Why don't you? Because I sent an attachment that didn't end up in the agenda. 3 documents, so. Anyway, the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
With all due respect, we also have a motion where we didn't have a notice of motion, and this was hurried up onto the agenda, so we're doing our best to get this taken care of. 4 or 5 points to answer a variety of questions that council has had. With respect to shared facilities with the school, for the record, I think it's a great idea. Anytime we can share facilities with the school, I think it's a good use of money, and it's a good use of maximizing public dollars and public facilities. For example, if you're gonna build a playground, why not build it outside the back door of the school, and then everybody benefits? Where we need to be really good is in that agreement with the school division around use and maintenance and all those kinds of things, to make sure we're clear on who has what role in all of that. Those come through your joint use agreements. Joint use agreements are between municipalities and school divisions, and we're getting ready to embark on a joint use agreement, or also known as a JUPA, joint use. I shouldn't even have said that because I don't remember what it is. Joint use planning agreement. So generally in your joint use agreements, you talk about who's gonna share what, when it'll be allowed, who will use schools' use of municipal facilities during the day, community use of school facilities after school hours. So those types of things can typically be contemplated in those agreements. One of the perils of bringing forward projects like this in isolation is we don't have the rest of them to weigh them up against, and I think that's what I'm hearing council say is it would be nice to weigh this against the rest of the options and see what else we have. And by the way, look at that through the lens of our strategic priorities and key results that the council's already set forth, to see. Now, all things don't need to be measured against those, but certainly that's the compass by which we make decisions as a municipality. I have a couple of more questions for the school, because we haven't had the opportunity to answer those, such as, is this, how much funding does the school need? Is this project predominantly funded already? Are there, or are we that far off? You know, we could vote across in a budget amendment of operating funds, to be clear, not capital, the $25,000, how far does that get them down, further down the road? So these are all things that we would like to iron out, but I think some of the councils alluded to taking a look at phase 2 of the capital. Not that this is a capital project, but this would be weighed against other recreation type projects that might be in the queue or the council might have some interest in. I think that's worthwhile. I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't have a sense for the urgency that the school has on this project. Mayor Crane seems to be signaling that they'd like to get the shovel in the ground here in the next month or so and get it done before the end of the school year. And that's valid, but I would caution council that they proceed at the pace that is comfortable for them. So, having said that, I think Mayor Crane has a revised
Got it now. Here we go. To amend the motion to defer the motion to support the PTA in the amount of $25,000 until after phase 2 capital budget discussion meetings are complete. That way it's open-ended till the end of June or whenever we get that done. And that way we can weigh it against it. And we can decide by then. Yeah, I think the juke was gonna come in.
Mayor Crane, just a little bit of wordsmithing on your
Yep,
motion. I
sure.
don't think we need to defer anything. I think the revised motion would simply be that council discusses the possibilities, the council discusses the request of the school at the same time as capital budget deliberations take place. Does that meet your intent?
That's pretty much exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna weigh it against it.
Yep,
Right.
yeah, just change, but we're not deferring anything is all I'm saying. We're just gonna revisit it.
Well, we have to amend it, right? So. Heather, when you wordsmith, we'll have a read back. And seeing as we're on the topic, is there any chance we can add in some JUPA, joint use project? What do we got there? Joint use planning? Yeah. We'll leave that one alone. That can be a separate administrative inquiry. Where are we at?
It's on the list.
Well, it's an administrative document anyway, just like the shared service agreement.
Go ahead, Heather.
It's on this list.
Motion supported by Mayor Crane that council discusses the request of the Turner Valley PTA at the phase 2 capital budget discussions.
Perfect. All in favor of that motion? There you go, it's passed. You're good, you're a good
I
councillor.
had something important to say.
Oh, did you?
No, I guess not.
No, you
No.
you can if you like, but it's passed. We're gonna have it after the next one. Okay, moving on.
You know, I do need to say something.
Yeah, go ahead. Your light, Mr. Sharp? There you go.
I just like to say that we talk about the importance of partnerships. This is a partnership. We talk about the importance of the PTA, and that's a great organization to do a lot of commendable work, and I think we need to not lose sight of that. We haven't supported this motion right now. That doesn't mean it won't come up later, but I think there's two things that we need to stress. PTA's done an awesome job for that school. School's great, and partnerships are what we believe in. So that's significant, I think.
Yep.
Well put. Okay, moving on, 13.3, response to Jason Martin question received council at April 1st, 2019 regular business meeting. Mr. Sharp, you take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. We have Mr. Malenko on hand today to discuss response to their request.
Thank you. Would you like to come up to the microphone, Mr. Malenko, please?
Evening, Mayor, Council.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome, Councillor Holladay. So before you, you have staff's response with regards to the set of questions that were posed to you last council meeting. I have nothing further to add unless you have questions. Thank you.
There you go.
I have nothing further to add unless you have questions regarding my submission. I trust the report speaks for itself.
Okay, Council, you have 18 pages in your agenda outlining detailed pictures, drawings, and administration's stance. Any questions? Hit your button there for me. Thank you, sir. Councillor Wookie.
Thank you, Mr. Malenka. Took a look through all of it, so if I understand correctly, it's sort of, things were handled appropriately from the perspective of the town. There's no further action to be taken. If I'm characterizing correctly, I did just wanna get your views on two items. The way I see this, this is an issue related to residents that own properties on the edge of an existing development. That's what led to the issues I think that we're facing here, which is a somewhat unique circumstance within development agreements. Not rare, but there's only a limited number of those properties within a development agreement. In this circumstance, I understand the Martins feel that they can't build a fence, don't know what the final grades are gonna be like around the property. I would have concerns about that too with young children, worries about the water. So I understand that things were handled appropriately from the administration's perspective, but what I would ask is, do we have any specific considerations that we put towards handling those properties that are on the edge of developments? It's one thing when you buy a property that's in the middle of a new subdivision and you've got empty lots around you, you expect that those will fill up over time. But when you buy a property on the edge of a development and there's a subsequent phase of development, I think there's some sort of expectation that there could potentially be lengthy delays. I mean, that's my thinking if I'm looking at a property. Do we treat those properties differently at all? Do we put any consideration to that in developing or in putting together our development agreements? And second question would be, are there circumstances in situations like this where, you know, we could provide assistance, you know, potentially without any cost to the town, from a resource perspective or from a risk perspective? For example, you mentioned, you know, you directed the developer to pump out some of the standing water on the development, just to get rid of some of that standing water. In that situation, is it something that you could suggest to the developer? Is it worth checking with the Martins? They will likely have some water on their property. Is it worth checking to pump out their property while you're there, right? I know it was somewhat of a short-lived issue, but I just, are there small things like that that could potentially help with a situation like this?
Mr. Mulder?
Through the mayor, that's a lot of questions. I'll see if I can try to touch on some of them. Just sort of touching on that first question with regards to the pump out situation, that was back in 2018 at the time with when there was some pooling going on the property to the north at the construction site. In that particular instance, administration did look at it at the time, and this again was seasonal runoff as well. We had much more last year than we did this year. But with regards to that, is we looked at it and said, okay, there is a potential for that runoff to potentially affect adjacent properties. We didn't feel we had that situation happening in 2019. The developer, since the 2018 incident, had created a berm around the property in question, and then as such, basically encouraged the subject site to drain away from the site, the residents. So from staff's perspective, we didn't feel there was anything more that could be done. With regards to drainage, there will be ponding on any piece of land in the town if you have a low spot, especially during runoff. So I mean, as you alluded to already, it was for a short-lived period of time. I think there was a 2 to 3 week window when we had runoff. But if you go look at the subject site now, construction site, it's predominantly dry. So it's just a matter of the ground thawing and water running off. So there's a small period of time in the year where that may happen. And provisions by the developer put into place. So we thought that was fair on the part of the developer with regards to that. The developer also made accommodations to provide for access to the garage that's in the rear yard. And no obligation to the developer, but they have done that from the first developer to the second to the third, and we're on a third developer now. So provisions were made all along the way to accommodate the property owner, although that requires use of the construction lands to be used by the occupant of the garage. With regards to fencing and grading of Mr. Martin's property, we've touched base with Mr. Martin on this on a number of occasions, whether it be in writing or in person, and there's nothing stopping the Martins from putting a fence up and establishing the grades. They have a grading plan that was approved for their site back in 2014, I believe it was. So the grades for the site is set. They have documents, and if they don't, we can provide it to them. And so the grades and elevations are set on the plan. So that doesn't end the parameters. They can easily bring a surveyor in to delineate their property lines. And with that, they can also set the grades with the surveyor. For whatever reason, they've chosen not to at this time. So the town is not, in the development, I would suggest, is not stopping an applicant or adjacent property owner from putting up their fencing if that's what they choose to do. With regards to various steps adjacent, yeah, I know we were dealing with a bit of a unique situation in the case of Blue Rock Heights, formerly Sky Mountain. Like as I alluded to, we have 3 developers to date on this one. The good thing is I guess compared to other developments we've had in the town, which are sitting dormant and not proceeding, this one is proceeding, although on multiple developers, as opposed to going bankrupt or stalling in some cases that we've experienced in this town. So that's a benefit. The municipality, through the development agreement, could suggest that we would take over the project. So if the suggestion is well, how do we get this thing moving? Because we don't think it's moving fast enough. The development agreement and the securities in place would allow us to basically use the securities to complete the site as best as possible with whatever funds are available in securities. That would be sort of a last resort, simply because we have activity with the previous developer and the developer before that and the current one that they're proceeding. It may not be as timely as Mr. Martin and Mrs. Martin would like to appreciate, but it is moving. So from the town's perspective, I don't think it's in our best interest to get in, try to take over the project and try to finish it to some extent. We'd never finish it, we wouldn't have the funds. It'd simply be to grade it and then it would sit. Plus I think we also might be in a legal battle with the developer because they are moving in a, well, maybe not fast enough for some people, they are moving forward. And that we expect that in the last meeting I had with them the other week, they're expected to move forward again on doing some surface work, the shallows this time this year. So again, we believe there's a process. I think in the case of the Martins historically, is previous developers have indicated the timeline we'll be moving this year, we've been moving this year. And it didn't always come to fruition. So I could see and appreciate the frustration of the Martins when they're being told it's developing right away. This will be done in a year, and then boom, it goes to another developer, or boom, it goes to another developer. But unfortunately, that's the result of living adjacent to a construction site and development. If there was an opportunity for us to fast track it, we would, but the process is set in place, securities are there, and if the development is moving forward, albeit maybe not as timely as others would think, I don't suggest the town intervene, jump in and try to expedite the development process, because usually that doesn't end up going in the right direction. Did I miss any? I may have missed some of your questions.
Sorry, may I ask a clarification on that?
Yeah, you bet. Oh, Rob's gonna beat you to it, and then we'll go back to you.
Go back.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just to clarify, I mean, yeah, by mentioning the development agreement, I'm not suggesting necessarily a takeover or anything like that, even remotely close to that here. What I am thinking about is just, you know, when we look at future development agreements, and I think about this site in particular as because it's going to have, you know, it's got the road frontage and then road along the side of it, plus a laneway. It's surrounded essentially on 3 sides by development, or it was until the sidewalk came in and those types of things, right? So what I'm more meant to deal with is in circumstances where a property is on the edge of the development, do we give consideration to that? You know, my thinking is and this is just completely hypothetical, right? In that sort of a situation, could you have your curbs go in for that street that runs along the side of the Martins, and that gives them their grades and that allows them to finish their property into a unfinished road allowance? You know, are those things that we can consider or that do get considered under development agreements, or just tell me if I'm completely out of turn there?
So through the mayor, no, not really, to be blunt. Now, just to give you a bit of context, the Martins were part of a 3-lot subdivision, what was referred to then as Sky Mountain Phase 1. Adjacent to them is Sky Mountain Phase 2 that's evolved into Blue Rock Heights. With all due respect to the Martins and anybody else who purchases adjacent to a subdivision that's under construction or going to be, even if it's a vacant piece of land, you buyer beware. You should be aware of what you're moving into adjacent to. So in the case of the Martins, I would respectfully suggest, as well as the other 2 property owners that were part of Phase 1, that they knew that development was going to happen at some point in the future behind them and to the west of them, and they'd be impacted in some way, shape, or form, inconvenience, be it dust, be it what have you, access limitations maybe. So with that comes that expectation. There's not much the town can do on that. We'd always like it if a development came in and was in and out of there within a year. But towns such as Turner Valley operate at a smaller and slower pace sometimes than you might find and say, if you're watching what's going on with DRC Ranch in Okotoks, they're moving at a really quick pace, but there's a lot of money thrown at it, and you've got a lot of experienced developers where they're able to throw everything at it. We don't have that in Black Diamond in Turner Valley necessarily, so we are at a bit of a disadvantage in that respect. So that just comes with the territory. In the development agreement, we can structure development agreements a number of ways. But again, our development agreement we just put together, which was the most recent template, we did apply to Blue Rock Heights prior to me joining the town. And it's a pretty solid development agreement. It covers a lot of things, but it does pay attention mainly to on-site and making sure that a developer doesn't affect off-site, and as it relates to drainage. And one of the questions was alluded to in a reference to a section of the development agreement. And the developer did what they were needed to do. They ensured that no drainage happening on the site would impact adjacent properties once it was brought to their attention. So they did mobilize, and that berm serves that purpose. So I'm not sure, other than going above and beyond, if there's much the town can do or should be doing, unless the developer wants to go out of their way. But they have no obligation to do that if they so choose not to. But as I've alluded to, I think all 3 developers have been fair with the Martins with regards to ensuring they have access to a garage back there until such time as that lane was actually formally finished, completed, and handed off to the town. With regards to sidewalk work around the site, as you're asking about, that wasn't part of Phase 1. I know the issue with the sidewalk in front of their house was, and that was rectified last year when it was brought to our attention, that it could have been extended a little bit further to the property line and it hadn't been for whatever reason. So we did extend it so they could have a sidewalk in continuity to their front sidewalk or front walk to their house. But beyond that, property line starts and ends, and it's another phase, it's another piece of a development. So to put in any sidewalk beyond that into the new development compromises that construction, and then who pays for it? I don't think we'd find a developer that wants to put in a temporary sidewalk only to remove it in a year or 6 months or whatever their timing may end up being. And I don't recall in my time ever having to be in a situation where we want you to put something in only to basically rip it out in 6 months or a year per se. So from my perspective, I wouldn't be seeking that in a development agreement. What's on your site and how you tie into adjacent lands is all relevant and put into a development agreement. But with regards to trying to mitigate anything with regards to adjacent properties, we try to be as fair as we can, and the agreement is there. But again, if you're purchasing next to a construction site, there are some inconveniences that will come with that, unfortunately, until that development is done. And anybody who backs on to Everwood could probably relate to that, because that development hasn't continued on for 6, 7, 8 years. So I can see there'd be frustration in individuals who back onto that as well. But again, the town doesn't get to dictate when that happens. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. Councillor Rapp.
Yeah, this particular property issue seemed to percolate with this particular property since I got on council. And I think we need to be problem solvers and try and help see if we can get the problem solved. Now, they tell me, I was told earlier that I was one of the old guard here, so I guess maybe I'm kind of old-fashioned and have old ideas, I don't know, but the bottom line is common sense. There's lots of good things in this world, I think. And it just seems that as I say, just seems to keep percolating. And when I look at permission for rear fencing garage, I think it's on page 7, councillors, if you want to look. On July 16, 2014, the Martins received development permit approval from the Municipal Planning Commission for a rear yard garage, which did not have access via Anderson Crescent. Planning staff at the time recommended refusal of the garage as it didn't provide for direct access to public roadway. MPC chose to support the garage application. Once MPC has rendered this decision, planning staff may not refuse issuance of the development permit. and the rest goes on and on. So what I'm saying that I think as a town, we need to wear some of this issue as far as letting them build garage in the back if it shouldn't have been done. So you go on to talk about, they currently don't have any access. That's part of the concern. They don't have access to the garage.
They do
Well,
have
they do,
access.
but there's a berm there and there's access and, you know, and it says here, developers have, they have access, but it could be closed. But it does say here very careful, but very specifically, Martin residence would be built out within a year and therefore laneway access was imminent, okay? So if I was the Martins and I built a garage in the backyard, got permission from MPC, town supported it, I guess, got my permits, built my garage, and then I have a hassle getting into it, that would be frustrating for me, and I'd say, why did this happen? So to me, it looks like we're kind of batting cleanup here. It says this will be imminent, okay? When the laneway access will be imminent once that subdivision is complete. In the interim, there is a back lane that goes for all except the last 3 properties. So I don't see any reason why it says email. Okay, let me see. Something else I want to read. To block access, no. To make a long story short, they could restrict access, I suppose, but why would you want to? Wouldn't we be able to get an easement on that piece of property, like on those last 3 streets, so they can access the garage in the interim? As far as as far as building a fence, get the property up to grade and build a fence, and go out an extra foot or 2, and don't worry about the neighbors until such time they build. That shouldn't be an issue. But I think that access to the garage is a pretty big thing for me. Okay, so I think we have to use common sense. We have to try and help solve problems here so that we can move on from this thing that just seems to percolate all the time. And I'll find this other one I want to read, but I missed it right now.
Thank you, Councillor Rabb. Any other questions?
Here we go.
Oh,
here we go.
sorry, go ahead.
And while
okay, Rabb, then Malinka.
And while all 3 developers to date have been accommodating the Martins, in not restricting their access to the garage, the Martins are in effect trespassing in the absence of any formal access easement agreement between the 2 landowners. So yeah, they might be able to access their garage, but really, if you say here that they're trespassing, that's not very good. Maybe we get an easement so that they wouldn't have to trespass to get to the garage. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. For common sense, doesn't make sense, sorry.
Mr. Malinka.
Thank you. So through the chair, the access imminent, if I'm not mistaken, actually came from the Martins, and through correspondence we'd seen back in the day, who were talking with the developer, which was Sky Mountain at the time. So the developer, from my understanding, talking with the Martins back in June of last year, was indicating that they were being told that subdivision phase 2 was imminent, when it was going to be happening. They'd be done in no time, and you'll have your laneway. It's all good. Keeping in mind the lane was never part of phase 1. So I could appreciate the fact that the Martins were led to believe, by the sounds of it, from the developer, that was happening any day now. Now, town doesn't get to dictate the timing. The developer made some commitments, promises verbally. Doesn't appear anything was too much put in writing from what we can see in our files. And they were led to believe it's happening anytime soon. And now, fast forward 2019, and while there's been some work and some progress, they still don't have a formalized lane back there. Now, with regards to the access easement, I brought that very point up to the Martins when I was on site for the first time with them, meeting in June of 2018. I said, we looked at the title on both properties. There's no access easement agreement in place on that other piece that allows you to have access legally on their lands. Do you know if there was any attempt to do that? And they had indicated, if I recall correctly, no, we didn't have anything. It was just sort of a handshake deal. And I recommended it's in their best interest probably to go after an easement agreement. The town doesn't get involved in that one, between 2 property owners. But I did recommend they should talk to the developer at the time, which is Black Valley Developments, and ask them if they can entertain one. Because if we have developer number 2 go down, then we're back where we started again, where maybe developer 3 doesn't give you that access. So it's a smart move to get that done. I don't know if the Martins approached the developer with regards to that, or if the developer, if they did approach, said no, but that is something we did recommend to the Martins, and I don't believe any access agreement's been put on title today. With regards to all 3 developers, you're right, they've been extremely accommodating. They don't have to. I mean, the fact is, they've actually moved their berm work that they used to protect the site further north so they could encourage or allow the access to the alleyway. So they take risk and liability by allowing that to happen, and they've chosen to do that for everybody coming through. So I think that bodes well for a developer trying to work with adjacent property owners when they have no legal obligation to do so. Maybe the Martins want to go and approach that again with a new developer, perhaps on access easement. Because who knows, maybe the developer number 3 doesn't finish off this year and it goes on for another year potentially. And we just take what we get from the developers, take it to be what it is, and things can change on a dime sometimes. So it's the best we can do on that end.
Thank you. So Councillor Holladay.
Yeah, I have a few questions. So that alleyway, up in behind all those houses, there's the old tennis court lands. Does the town own any of that back alley?
Through the mayor, we own, the town owns the alleyway in behind the tennis court lands, and that's basically where it stops. So those 3 lots that are referred to as Sky Mountain Phase 1, there was never a plan, or the Phase 1 plan never included a rear laneway. The architectural control guidelines confirm that, because when the 3 lots were created, architectural control guidelines were set in place that said you had to have front attached garages. So it was very specific and deliberate that there wasn't gonna be a lane back there, hence why the houses had to have front attached garages on Anderson. Now, back in I think it was 2016, when the Martins went for their permit, they ended up getting a sign off from the developer who oversees the ARC guidelines to get a waiver on that requirement for the garage. So that's how the garages should have been front attached, and is in the case of the other 2 lots, was then put in the back rear yard, because they granted that exemption. MPC, I'm assuming, took that as permission from the developer that they could go against the ARC guidelines, and then reach that decision to allow the garage in the back. So those 3 lots do not have a proper laneway at this point in time. When the construction's finally done on Phase 2, that laneway will become the ownership of the town and just be a continuation of what's already.
Okay, thank you. Because there's 3 lots involved here, it makes me wonder why we would require him to get an easement from the developer when I'm pretty sure the other 2 neighbors are probably also interested or using that back alley at this point to get into their yards for gardening or other things. How hard is it really for the town to ask the developer for the town to get an easement on that for public use, an extension of our alleyway? How is that extremely expensive? Or is it something we can do in-house? It takes a few hours to get it so there'd be access for all 3 residents there. Because I'm sure I'm sure it's not just the Martins using it, I'm sure the other people might find that handy. That's my first question. Other question, I do agree with what Councillor Wilkie was talking about, making sure that we don't have these lots that are stranded. Because they were 3 lots, but they were taken out of the whole piece, were they not? Like, it wasn't just one single developer with 3 lot lands. It was a chunk taken out. So I think there's a lesson to be learned. This is more just a comment than a question, I guess. That we look at things when we're approving them as MPC and as planners, that we're not, if anything can be just constructed like a curb around the property or the back alleyway, that we do consider that instead of just deferring it. So I think there's a lesson that we need to look at. I'm also wondering about the grade, because it's been a few years since we've built a house, but from what I remember building in High River, that in order to get a sign off as a builder, you had to have your final grades up to where they were supposed to be, and signed off on by a surveyor. So is that not a requirement in our town that when a place is built, that you have your final grade surveyed and checked in order to get your compliance and your building deposits back? I thought, it sounds like it's not, so how did they get signed off? And then the final thing, they did bring up some of the safety issues about the storm pond and other hazards around. Your report didn't, at least I couldn't see it, didn't address that. So is the storm pond graded properly so that there's not steep slopes that could trap children or not? Or are there other contours or issues elsewhere on the site that are a hazard? Because we know kids are going to go on that property. As much as we say they shouldn't, it's going to happen. So were safety issues looked at when you were doing your report?
got some there now.
Okay, well, I was smarter, I took the notes better this time, so I got all the questions.
There you go.
Now, with regards to the two neighbors' access, the time I've been at the town, and as far as I can see in the files and history, we've never heard anything from the adjacent other two landowners that are part of phase one, if you wanna call it that. It's only the Martins referred to with regards to the alley access. So we aren't hearing from the other two that there's a serious need to have a shared access agreement in place. So that doesn't suggest to us that we need to go over and above and try to negotiate or facilitate a shared access agreement. That really would be between two property owners. The only one who seems to be wanting of access on there in the interim appears to be the Martins. Staff, I wouldn't be recommending staff get in the middle of an engagement such as that to work on an access agreement. We've indicated, as I said, back in June of last year to the Martins that they should be talking to the developer and asking for a shared access agreement. The developer doesn't have to honor that. There's no obligation on their part, and I don't think the town's get caught in the middle of a situation like that. So, again, can you reiterate, we have a new developer. If Mr. Martins or the Martins, have forgotten what we shared with them last summer, is maybe they should go engage the developer this time around. And they have their contact information, so there's nothing stopping them from reaching out to see if there is some interim arrangement. With regards to phase one versus phase two and sidewalks, not having been part of the three lot phase one subdivision, I would respectfully suggest it'd be different ways of doing it. The laneway, I never understood why the laneway wasn't part of phase one. It would seem logical that if the rest of the subdivision over there in Anderson had a laneway, that you do the continuation. And since the developer owned all of those lands, they could have easily included the laneway in the back as part of that development. For whatever reason, they chose not to, and for whatever reason, the town didn't seek it or ask for it or make it a condition regardless of what they applied for. With regards to wrapping the sidewalk or the road around the Martin property, the developer could have offered that up as well. Hazard any guess the developer didn't do that because the additional cost to wrap that road all the way around the Martin site, tied into the alley, only benefited the Martin property and may have possibly compromised their phase two. So it could have been a cost issue for the developer. It doesn't mean the town couldn't have asked for it or an NPC couldn't have required it as a condition or as part of the approval back in the day, but they chose not to. So the property ended where it did, or it ends where it does. It doesn't wrap around the Martin's property. The alley was not to be finished until the next following phase, and that's the hand the town got dealt with when the decision was rendered for phase one. And phase two deals with that, obviously, to finish it, but we don't have a finished phase two. It isn't unusual to see development be done in phases. Now, a 3-lot subdivision, maybe it's indicative of a smaller town. A 3 lot's pretty minor, it doesn't really do much. Typically, you're gonna see a 23 lot or a 10 lot or something, subdivision. But a 3 lot, that's an interesting one. I would have probably paid more attention to it if I was here at the time, saying why just 3 lots, why not continue it on and do more? But that's what it was. There was lands on Edward that were part of the original lands back in the day. I think it was a 7-lot subdivision. So some of this was done piecemeal at the time. And so I could, if I'm the developer, I'm assuming that if I'm doing 3 lots, there's not a lot of money in it for me. So to do a wraparound of the road all the way, finish the alley, if I was to do an alley, probably doesn't make it very viable to do a 3-lot subdivision. But that's also where the town steps in and says, hold on a minute, we need to have some continuity, we need to have some closure, if you wanna call it that, and ask for those things moving forward. So lessons learned, definitely, but we are dealing with the hand we've been dealt, and so are the adjacents. With regards to final grades and securities, how that process works is when you come in with a new build, we deal with we collect securities. Right now it's $1,500 for the builder to pay, and that's sort of to incentivize them to finish the project, make sure there's no damage on roads, sidewalks, etc. And if they don't come through, then we can use that money towards that. In the case of the Martins property, we have never returned the security on that site, so they've never submitted as-bills to us. So that's part of the problem to some extent is, you know, if they haven't come with us with as-bills, being the developer at the time, or the builder at the time, and Armstrong Pine Homes was the company that was working with the Martins on this one. If they don't provide us with the as-bills, then it doesn't trigger us to return to security. We don't go chasing it down. But we do have approved plot plans and approved grading plans of which the development is supposed to comply and follow, based on how phase one was supposed to develop out. So they looked at it from a drainage perspective on all 3 lots just as they're doing with Blue Rock Heights now, is how does the site drain as a whole, and then what does that mean for each individual lot to make sure it all works together? So that exists, and while they haven't, the town hasn't signed off on the grades, they haven't come forward and asked for it. So if the Martins chose to finish the grades as per the per approved plans, and they wanted to come in with some as-built, maybe somebody else would prepare them instead of the builder who's long gone now. They could do that, and we could return securities, although that would go back to the original builder, so it's kind of a moot point. But that is a floating issue up there, but it wasn't completed properly in the builder's side of it, I would suggest, simply by the fact that we've never returned the security. With regards to the stormwater pond grading and doing it properly, we are dealing with a construction site, we are dealing with private property. And while I appreciate that individuals may cross over the property, they do so, I would suggest at their own risk. It's a construction site. We do talk about, or I talk about in the report, the ability, if council so chooses, to require fencing, construction fencing around a site of this size, and that can be an option too. But there's a certain level of risk that we have to have consideration for. And the storm pond is a dry pond. It will function ultimately as a dry pond. So it won't hold much water unless you have some major storm events. But in the interim, it's somewhat of a hole, and I'm not sure if you've attended the site since the information has come out and since the last council meeting. But it's a fairly dry site right now, and there's some low-lying areas where the pond is somewhat, but I would suggest you can get in and out of that pond unless you're stuck in the mud. But if you've got that far, you did a pretty good hike to get all the way into that storm pond, because it's pretty far into the site. Now, as I've alluded to in the package I've given you as well, is one thing I've talked to the developer about, and we were going to do is just remind everybody who lives adjacent to the site that they do so live next to a construction site, and it is an active construction site. And to please be aware and cognizant of that piece being a construction site. And while there may not be equipment on it, and obvious that there's activity you should stay off, it's still a site that could pose dangers. But that's where we are with regards to that site at this point in time, just short of fencing and all. There is some signage on the site from the previous developer. It's around the perimeter. Signing may help, pictures may help for those who aren't reading the signs or can't read. But with regards to grading properly, I can't speak to whether it's graded properly or not. It's still in the construction phase. I assume there's still more work to go, more landscaping to be done on the pond. But it doesn't appear that it's going to be going deep, so you can't climb out of it. It seems like it's pretty gradual. You can walk out, which is typical with most of our ponds in town, is they are gradual slopes, are not steep. So if you are near the shoreline for whatever reason of a wetland / pond, you can reasonably climb out of there. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Malika. Do I have any, Councillor Hamilton?
So, in going through all of this documentation, something I'm realizing is, and as someone who currently sits on MPC, not who did at the time, but who currently does, I'm realizing the importance of listening to admin recommendations, because a lot of these problems, I think, could have been, or wouldn't have been problems if the rear access garage wouldn't have been granted at the time, as per the original architectural guidelines and plans for the development. So I think that that's something for us all to keep in mind. Again, in reading through all of the documentation, I think that the developer and administration has done a good job of pumping out runoff when it was holding. I don't see a current safety risk. I do live right close to this dry pond as well. I live on the other, so it's dry pond, wet pond, quite deep, and then my house. I walked over there, I couldn't see a safety risk. I do have children. I've lived behind a pond since they were babies, and we have to be very mindful that there is water there. And I think that that is a risk for any community that's got a pond in it, that we do have to be mindful, and we do have to be reminding our kids to stay in the yard or being with them at all times. But the way that it sits right now, it is dry. I don't see to me, it doesn't look necessary that fencing to be put up, especially if the town currently doesn't have any bylaws in place saying that it should be erected. So I'm really not sure how to move forward, how to appease our residents. That I think is important. We've got some residents that are unhappy with the situation. We, I think, need to work with them to make it right, but I'm just not sure what the exact answer is. Like, how do we move forward from this? How do we put some closure on this situation as a town for the Martins who live here and for administration who spends a lot of time working with them? As a council, I think that we need to sit down and figure out how to just get some closure on this situation. So I'm not sure what that looks like. Maybe we can facilitate an easement with, like that was suggested by Councillor Rob, maybe we facilitate an easement with the developer and the Martins, so then that closes that loop. Maybe we can be mindful, asking the developer to watch for pooling water in the future so it can be pumped immediately before it becomes a safety risk to children. These are just a couple of my suggestions. I think that we need to, in good faith, move on. We can't change the mistakes of the past. There's nothing we can do about that. There was obviously some made, but we can try to move forward. And this situation has come to this council quite a few times in the year and a half that I've been sitting on council. So I think that for everybody involved, some closure. So those are two of my suggestions. Maybe let's work together, get the Martins and the developer together, get an easement done, and act maybe a formal letter to the developer asking that they watch for standing water. That can help with safety issues for their children until events can go up.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I would like to thank you for all the work. I'm sure we are talking dozens and dozens of hours have gone into this inquiry. I know a lot of work has been done on both your side and the Martin side. They've gone over and above to provide their documentation as well. So really thank you for putting all this work into it. I think, personal opinion here for me, after reading through everything, listening to the extensive Q&A, the biggest part of this answer lies in the developer, in my opinion. And it's just unfortunate that the timelines of developers and the economy has slowed to the point where it just drags on. If this developer was ready to go and houses were being built, this wouldn't even be in front of us. As simple as that. It would have been dead years ago. So it's just an unfortunate situation. I don't see the safety hazard to myself. I went for a jog over there as well. It dries up fairly fast. So, I mean, everything is valid, especially when you're talking about kids. But one of my things, being a home builder as well, and when I look at corner lots in particular, there's offsets that fencing have to be set in from any sidewalk or drainage. So, if you want to build a fence, you can build a fence, because you have to offset it inside your lawn anyway, and there has to be a certain amount of frontage. So, there's things that can be done, cheap options. It's not for me to decide what those are, but if safety is concerned, cheap options can be done to remedy certain ones. Anyway, thank you for all the work you put into this. At this point, I think we need to accept this for information, and if we need to move forward with more direction from council, then I think we need to have that discussion again. And have to look at it from council, but right now I'd love to entertain a motion to adopt this for information. Councillor Gordon makes that motion. All right, any further discussion on that? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, that is carried. Thank you. New business 14.1. Thank you, Mr. Malinka. Council discussion, coffee with council, open house. Councillor Holladay, would you like to fill us in on this?
Yeah, this is something I wanted to add to talk about is one thing that was clear from the election forums that Councillor Wilkie just went through was that we need to communicate better with our residents. It was something that we all talked about a lot when we were getting elected, and we kind of got drowned in work and have put it off. But I'd really like to see every 6 months for a town hall or some sort of coffee council chat to go on. May and November seems reasonable, but since we're getting late start, it might have to be early June this time. And I think I would like to see all of council being able to take on different topics, to discuss maybe at the beginning, give a little bit of a presentation of where things are and where we've gone over the last year and a half. And then those presentations would then give, residents an opportunity to have some questions and know who to field them to. So, yeah. I'm sure that they'll go easy on Councillor Wilkie since he's new, but the rest of us should definitely have the chance to tell residents what we've done and accomplished since they elected us. So I'm not sure about venue. I'm assuming an evening or a Saturday would be best for this. We also, if we have it in early June, then we would have the chance with our audited financial statements to give them a little bit of information, as well that motion that I made at the last meeting to have a public report on employment levels. I think that would be of interest for residents to discuss at that time. There's lots of amalgamation. That was something I think that I was itching to talk about when they were bashing that around at the forums. But we definitely need to get better information out there. So if I could have some input on venue and timing and interest, that you're all agreeing to come. Don't want it to just be me showing up. That would be great.
Thank you, Councillor Holladay. Councillor Waring, or Deputy Mayor Waring?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Holladay, for this. Councillor Gordon and myself had already discussed this, and we've decided between us that we were going to approach the rest of council and try to arrange this without bringing it to a council meeting. But that's fine that you've done that, and I fully support your proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Make us available to the public for discussion. Are you talking like a formal forum? Because it kind of sounds like that.
No.
Oh, okay. Or are you just talking like get together at the library and Q&A?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what your recommendation was.
That was our idea.
I would like to have a little bit from us at the beginning, because we know what some of the hot topics are that maybe we haven't, especially questions that were asked at the recent forums. You can fill us in on all that. That, like amalgamation, that I do want to hit. And instead of just opening it up, who wants to ask a question at the get-go, I think having a little bit of a lead up, 20 minutes or so, or 10, or whatever council will agree to, having something to provide a framework for the night would be good. But if you're not up for that and just wanna sit and have coffee and donuts and talk, we could do that too. But I just thought perhaps having a little bit of something to give meat to the conversation would be good.
Councillor Waring, Deputy Mayor Waring.
Well, might as well go with council because it's nearly up anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, how formal this needs to be, I think we can discuss ourselves when we've decided what the date and what the venue is. It might just be a case of sitting at tables with a little sign in front saying, I'm in the West End, if you've got questions about sewage, talk to me, or things like this. A lot of what we've been discussing on amalgamation has been in fan meetings, which are in camera. So it's very difficult in a public discussion to try to remember what you are allowed to say and what you aren't. But I think we should make the effort ourselves to come up with dates and the venue, and once it's organised in that respect, we can then let people know it's happening.
Excellent, thank you. I think there's support here, so I'm gonna just cut right to the chase. If there's interest in holding an open house of this sort, then let's put it to a vote, and then we can work out the details later.
Yep.
That's basically what we've got in front of us anyway, so Councillor Holladay?
Motion to direct administration to arrange, should we just vote on it as a council? There's
Yep.
no,
Yeah, we're
okay.
going to do it.
Yeah, we're gonna do it and then we'll-
Okay, so we're not gonna give any direction for them to figure out some
No.
possible dates or times?
We're gonna-
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
That council supports, your suggestion, open house, coffee open house, however you wanna word it. And, then direct administration to, move forward with, scheduling something like that.
she said. Councillor Gordon?
Question for our legislative services through the chair, if I may. An item like this, I don't see anything in the MGA that restricts this. Is there a reason why administration needs to be involved?
No, no, none, we don't have to be there at all. But
Even setting it
you're
up,
go- Yeah,
right? This is a council directive, so why are we setting it up ourselves? Just my thought.
Mr. Sharp?
Well, far be it for me to argue against a lighter workload. But certainly we can help you facilitate it. You know, we can book the facility, we can advertise it, we can do all the administration piece behind it, that's fine, based on the dates that you agree to. We can help prepare council with the facts and the information that you might need if you're gonna do a short presentation. And there's a lot of lifting that we can help you for, or help you with in preparation for the evening. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, no, sounds totally fine by me. I'll be coming to you for sure, so I think as stands is good. After you.
Y'all confused me. How about the motion that council supports hosting an open house late May, early June, and asks direction to provide any support as required by council.
Perfect.
That can work,
sorry, the last part of that?
and get
And
support.
directs administration to provide any support as required by council.
Sounds like a fantastic motion.
The money for the coffee.
Any other comments? Nope, all in favor? Excellent. Fantastic, thank you, Councillor Holladay. 14.2, schedule special meeting, 2018 audit review and acceptance. So this is a special council meeting set for April 29th. We would like to see 6:30. So, that needs to be a motion. Wilkie, did you just look at me and wink? I think you did. Wilkie makes that recommendation that we have the April 29th, 6:30 is a Monday, 2019 special council meeting for the audit review. And we will be adding some more agenda items to that, but we don't need to talk about that right now. That'll be in the notification, correct? Just a question for you.
Any agenda?
We're just setting the date right now.
Yep,
If there's
exactly.
additional agenda items that are urgent, we can add.
Perfect.
That will be an open meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, perfect. There's the motion, guys. All in favor? April 29th, perfect, 6:30, Monday. Done. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So is there a meeting scheduled on May 1st, or is that not?
I don't know.
Cause that's in my calendar.
On mine.
May 2nd,
Should be
I
May
believe.
7th.
May 2nd, I
Let's get it from the
May
horse's
6th.
mouth here.
So, this isn't part of tonight's council agenda, it's not an agenda item to discuss. You're referring to, a workshop for capital budget purposes that we've been talking about, and May 1st or 2nd were the 2 dates thrown around. And I just haven't had a chance to synthesize all the responses and decide on that date. I had proposed May 1st, we had at least one councillor who suggested May 2nd. And so hopefully tomorrow we can iron out the dates to that.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Okay, so we've motioned on that and we passed it. Let me get back to the agenda here.
So that's April 29th, right?
April 29th, 6:30 on Monday here in council chambers. And we will get notification of that agenda a week before. Okay, moving on. General correspondence, we have no items. Correspondence action considered, we have no items. Committee board correspondence minutes. We have 17.1, Turner Valley Emergency Advisory Committee. Council representatives are Mayor Crane, Councillors Gordon and Hamilton. Councillor Gordon, Hamilton, would you guys like to speak to this? Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, this was the January 22nd simple advisory meeting about what needs to be changed moving forward with the amendments to the Emergency Management Act. We've had a meeting since then. where Mr. Rook has brought forward some of the amendments and has done a very, very good job. So I would make a motion that we accept these minutes simply as information, as the work is being done even as we go forward. That was kind of more of an administrative meeting to set the timeline about what Mr. Rook had to do moving forward from an emergency management perspective. Let me do say this as well. I know there was some comments. I love reading Facebook. It's a very entertaining. And there was some comments about, is there even a emergency management plan? Yes, there is. And it's very, very good. And Mr. Rook is very aware of the dry conditions to the west, and that's very much on their radar moving forward should we face a fire. So I'm very confident in Mr. Rook's ability. So I'd make that motion that we accept 17.1 as information, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. 17.2, West End Regional Sewage Services Commission. Councillor Deputy Mayor Waring, if you would please.
Okay, West End highlights of the meeting. Staff report, the system is working well and continues to operate within the limits of permissible levels. That flow volumes to the end of January, 8,234,900 cubic meters, of which 3,390,718 cubic meters came from Turner Valley, which was 41% of the volume, and the remaining 4.8 million, 59% from Black Diamond. The Secretary Treasurer has been completing the preparation work for the 2018 audit, and the board, the Commission rather, motion to approve Avil LLP as this year's auditors for the 2018. An update on the block line, for those of you who are not maybe aware. Originally there was a pipeline from Turner Valley that went to the Black Diamond plant. Because of the flooding in 2013, a second line was installed because of the safety aspects of washing out where the original line went along the river and under the river. When the new line came into operation, we discovered there was a significant problem with H2S levels in the line. Because of this, we switched back to the old line, which reduced the H2S problem. This worked reasonably well until September the 12th, I think it was, last year, when the line broke. The break was mended and the line was reused. For a certain moment, it blocked again, it blocked. Because of the blockage, we had to go back onto the new line again and try to determine what created the blockage. To date, we do not know. Just to give you an idea of this old line, when it was put in, there were something like, my notes,
66,
there was 2 11.5 degree bends, 3 22.5 degree bends, 21 45 degree bends, and God knows how many other bends. So to determine just exactly where this blockage is not easy. We have done some work with a camera and still not found it. So the latest is that we've agreed with a proposal from MPE to flush the line in spring of this year, the estimated cost of which is $6,000. We feel if this is not successful, then we will abandon the line unless there's a request from Turner Valley to continue with trying to unblock it. Our concern is with this line is even if we find this blockage and we manage to fix it, how long it is before there's another one. And just to dig up the line and try to find the source of this, we spent, I think it was $20,000 just to mend the break last time. So it could be just a huge cost in the future. So this means it's looking more and more likely that we'll only be working in the future on a new line. Which brings me to the other point of the meeting, was the H2S control in the new line. Currently we inject 6 litres per hour of bioxide during the week and 3 litres per hour on the weekends. Recently, we've been getting some spikes in the H2S in the weekends. This does not mean that it's happening on the weekend, because as you can appreciate, when it goes in the pipe here and it comes out over here, there's maybe a 2-day, 3-day time lag. So the proposal at the moment is to increase the amount of bioxide that's going into the line over the weekend. And also we've authorised MPE to come up with an automatic bioxide flow device, which means that once we know the H2S is spiking, that this can be addressed quite quickly, instead of waiting for 3 or 4 days or 5 days, whatever happens at the moment. The high H2S, if you're interested, is not just the fault of the line design, it's because of the high strength sewage, which is another matter that we'll be looking at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waring. Deputy Mayor Waring.
Soon to be councillor.
Can I get a, did you make a motion to
No
accept?
motion to accept for information.
Perfect. Councillor Deputy Mayor Waring, Councillor Waring. To accept for information. All in favor? There you go. We have the Foothills Cemetery Board, 17.3. Councillor Rapp.
Thank you, Mayor Sprain. We had 2 meetings subsequent to, or that are reported here, and we've actually had a 3rd one since, and have one more this week. Just business as usual, nothing major to report, so it's fairly straightforward, I think. Unless you have any questions, we'll move on. I'd like to make a motion that we accept it for information.
I can put that to the vote, but I would like to point out former councillor with County of MD, Ted Mills, a long time councillor, used to sit on that board. And I was talking to him at a Westlands meeting, and he said, "Oh, Councillor Rabb, I know him." He says he's facilitating the cemetery board. Are they still selling walkout lots? He said. And I didn't get the joke for the longest time. And he kind of looked at me and said, "The hill is on Facebook." So anyway, I thought that was a cemetery joke. I'd throw it in there for you, but
We do talk about walkouts, yeah.
there you go. Okay, all in favor? Excellent, thank you. 17.4, Foothills Regional Landfill Services Commission, Councillor Holladay.
Yeah, I think I addressed most everything, recycling and the study, the SWMP update. I did wanna draw attention to the BioCap project, because it's something nobody probably talks about much, but is really cool that the landfill's doing. It's a new system for covering the old landfill sites. They're working with UFC. So instead of covering it with a clay cap that costs a bunch of money, they're going to do this new project to cap it with a biocap, which is a bunch of bugs and plant vegetation. And instead of releasing all the methane that then they have to put millions into a system to try and get rid of, it eliminates 90% of the methane all on its own, and the system costs less to install, and then doesn't require the expensive methane capturing and all the millions that would go into it. So it's pretty cool that Jill Angevine has taken the lead on this and found this and done all the work behind it. And it's pretty exciting that we're going to be kind of ahead of most landfill sites in North America when they do this. So yeah.
Councillor Rapp?
Just one question, do they still put a clay cover on top, just thin layer, or just strictly bugs?
Yeah.
It's like you're getting ping pong.
It's an ecosystem that they're building, so whether there's, I don't know exactly what it calls, but it's all about the ecosystem of the plants and the bugs, so I'm not exactly sure what they grow it on. But it captures water also, that then eliminates the water issues of water running through the dump, so it's not the landfill, sorry.
I would imagine if they seal it, then the methane
Get stuck.
would be stuck
Yeah,
inside.
it
So
gets
if
vented.
you want
It's-
the methane to get into the vegetation and the roots and the bugs and all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah, they eat the methane.
You'd need that flow.
Yeah.
Just to point out one other thing about the effectiveness of the landfill commission. Joe, who is the site manager, last year I sat on the committee, and he approached another university professor who was looking at floating ponds. So there's 6 settling ponds on the very south of the landfill that collects any of the seepage. And he put in 200 floating island ponds, and all the roots go down about 3 feet into the water and just pull all the toxins out. So it's a very innovative landfill. It's one of the more well-run ones in our area. So it's a luxury that we're part of it. So thank you for that report and motion.
Yep, but, motion that we accept the, meeting minute.
Okay, all in favor?
We're looking at that for
Thank you very much. And we are done. Thank you all for attending. And congratulations, Mr. Wilkie, on your very first Town of Turner Valley Councillor meeting.